Hexagram, excuse me, Hexagram 33. Called this bad boy in today. Let's get started. Okay. Brrr. Retreating, hiding. The judgment. Retreating, success. In what is small, it furthers to be firmly correct. Receiving this hexagram counsels a person to retreat from certain mistaken ideas that keep him tied to the parallel reality created by the collective ego. The ideas are based on two words that have no cosmic basis: guilt and culprit. Even though they seem small, they have a big effect, if not eliminated by saying the inner no to them. Saying the inner no is the meaning of being firmly correct. A person may receive this hexagram when the ego in him is busy blaming something or someone as guilty or as a culprit, but especially when he is blaming life, the sage, nature, or the way of the cosmos. The sage retreats in the presence of the individual ego with its blaming and demanding. The person is counseled to retreat from his blaming activities through saying the inner no to the ego. Often, rather than face the threat of being condemned by others as guilty, or even to regard himself as guilty, he looks about to find someone or something else to blame. He needs to realize that guilt, in the sense of an inextinguishable stain, does not exist in the cosmic order. Blame, in the cosmic sense, is incurred when a person goes against his true nature by following the rules and values of the collective ego. This blame is erased the moment the person is truly sorry for what he has done and rids himself of the mistaken idea that has led to his error. His regret brings help from the invisible world to heal the damage that has been done. If, however, he believes that what he has done makes him guilty, then he prevents the helpers from healing the situation. He also puts a guilt spell on himself, under which he continues to suffer. The guilt makes him vulnerable to being used or abused by others. It also can make him believe that he must endlessly make atonements or reparations. Retreating can also be counsel to a person to withdraw from fears and doubts that press him to abandon the sage and the helpers he needs to free his true will from its imprisonment, free his true self from its imprisonment. Withdrawal, in this case, means a determined resistance not to be overcome by fear and doubt, and not to allow his will to be dominated by them. These emotions have their basis in phrases installed in the psyche by the collective ego, to the effect that if he abandons its way, it will punish, abandon, and pursue him to the farthest ends of the earth for retribution. The person can carry out this resistance to the collective ego by firmly saying the inner no to the threatening phases and to the fears they have inspired in him. Retreating also is the correct inner action to take when a person is tempted to adopt the image of the rugged individualist in defiance of the threats of the collective ego. This rebellious self image, ironically, is as agreeable to the collective ego as the self image of the person who goes out with the crowd, who goes with the crowd. Because in fleeing to yet another self image, the person remains within its system of self images. He remains within its system whenever he sees his options in terms of opposites, for it is the collective ego that has defined all possible options in terms of opposites. The ideogram tun, which gives this hexagram its name, in addition to retreating, can have the meaning of the hidden, thus pointing to the invisible world of the helpers. But tun can also refer to the way the collective ego hides the invisible world from view through presenting itself as the only source of protection and defense, and through presenting the invisible world as unreal. The collective ego, similarly, hides the true nature of humans behind the pronouncements that humans' animal nature is the source of evil and that they are guilty for having an animal nature. Traditional readings of this hexagram describe a war maneuver, which is a strategic retreat as preparation for an expected attack from an enemy. In its cosmic sense, it describes the reticence of a person in meeting another who has been aggressive and is now approaching to reconnect with him, supposedly in sincerity, but who really is still inwardly aggressive and hoping to catch his opponent off guard. It is correct to maintain a reticence and reserve regardless of outer appearances and to wait until the other has become truly sincere. While affairs are in this state, the person can keep track of the inner truth of the situation by checking with the sage. Receiving this hexagram can also indicate that a person needs to retreat from feelings of hurt pride. He does this through turning these feelings over to the cosmos and going into a state of emotional neutrality. Neutrality means, in practical terms, that he takes himself out of first gear, as in wanting to defend himself or in blaming the other, or out of reverse gear, as in wanting to get away and break all contact. He waits in neutral, which is devoid of any outward action or violent, unbalanced emotion. In another rendering, this hexagram can be advising a person to retreat from giving up on a situation in which he is misunderstood by another. This retreat has the purpose of allowing time. This retreat has the purpose of allowing time for a true understanding to develop. This hexagram may also help us to recognize and retreat from using techniques in meditation that block the sage from speaking. I'll read that again. This hexagram may also help us to recognize and retreat from using techniques in meditation that block the sage from speaking. Among these are meditation techniques that employ mantras, have rigid rules about keeping all thoughts out, control the contents of meditation with intellect, systematize in any way the communication between the meditator and the sage, or turn meditation into prayer. All these types of meditation or related activities have the effect of keeping the person from freeing himself of hidden elements such as guilt, thereby maintaining the program of the collective ego in his psyche. When viewed as one of the 12 calendar hexagrams, retreating represents the 8th month, showing the retreat of the light in the course of the year. It is used here as a metaphor for the retreat of the life force from a person. This retreat is not halted. This retreat, if not halted, leads eventually to death. In this aspect of the hexagram, a person is informed that the more he looks outside himself for guidance instead of to his inner truth and to the sage, the more he comes under the dominance of the collective ego. Because the collective ego defines everything in terms of right and wrong, the person becomes increasingly rigid in his thinking. Excuse me. Ever more separated from his inner truth, he eventually becomes a mere husk of a person who, although outwardly alive, is inwardly dead, operating only on the automatic pilot of his preformed ideas. The hexagram counsels him to retreat from the rigidifying ideas and beliefs that lead to inner death. He also needs to retreat from reliance on pre-structured inner programs that are in conflict with his inner truth and which produce conflict in his outer life. Rigid ideas can never correctly judge the uniqueness of each situation. The lines. For me today, I had line 1 and 2. Line 1. At the tail in retreating, this is dangerous. One must not wish to undertake anything. This line indicates the presence of a guilt spell. One must not wish to undertake anything is the advice given to someone who is about to do something motivated by guilt. When a person is in the process of retreating from following the collective ego, in order to follow his inner truth instead, the last means, the tail, that the collective ego employs to hold him back is to make him feel guilty for having separated from its rules and laws, the unwritten musts and should that have been instilled in his psyche during childhood and which are combined with the threat of drastic punishments. The danger referred to is that he will give way to his fears of becoming guilty and being punished. He is counseled not to undertake he is counseled not to undertake anything out of fear, but instead to ask the sage to help him rid himself both of his fear of guilt and his fear of punishment. If he fails to free himself from these destructive elements before undertaking anything, they will lead to a whole series a tale of complicating factors and create an increasingly toxic and rigid situation. This line also points to the strategy employed by the collective ego, excuse me, to gain access to the individual's life energy. It does so by injecting a guilt/fault spell into his psyche. The first guilt spell reads, "You are born with original fault/sin." The second spell says that evil arises from humans' animal nature, the lower instincts. Receiving this line indicates that a person needs to ask for help to rid himself of these spells of his true nature. See deprogramming guilt. A person may also receive this line when he is in the middle of arguing with another, or is tempted to do so to determine who is the guilty party. The message here is retreat from looking for a guilty party or culprit, as no such thing exists in the cosmic order. By saying the inner no to the idea of culprit, he is then counseled to ask the sage in his presence and the sage in the other person's presence to intervene with the egos that are active in the situation. This line can also refer to a person's inner arguments, which are a reaction to his feelings of guilt or blame. He may be allowing complaints against the sage or cosmic justice, as when he asks, "Why is this my fate?" It can also refer to inner conflict that is being concealed or repressed rather than addressed. A typical seed phrase in this context is, "This problem needs to be kept in the closet," and "Let sleeping dogs lie." Its premise is that it is easier to control problems by concealing them or by pretending that they don't exist, rather than getting to their root causes, which might expose one to shame. Resolving the problems means facing the causes inwardly and eliminating them with the help of the helpers. Line 2. He is held fast with yellow oxhide. No one can tear him loose. This line often refers to the person who, for one reason or another, feels guilty and believes that no one can take his guilt away. These feelings come from mistaken ideas about guilt and blame from which he needs to free himself. See guilt, blame, and shame. Oxhide refers to a particularly strong material that, when used to hold something, holds it fast. Yellow is a metaphor for something that is correct. Yellow oxhide, then, is a metaphor for the desire or propensity to be correct, but this desire is being thwarted by something strong. The strong element is the mistaken idea of guilt, which he has accepted from the collective ego. He rightly seeks to free himself of it, but employs means proposed by the collective ego, which, if followed, will give it even more power over him. Because such means are not in harmony with the cosmos, employing them will also create a fate. Such means are placing the blame on somebody else or on one's nature, trying to balance one's guilt by fighting for a cause sanctioned by the collective ego, making atonement through acts of self sacrifice to compensate for feelings of guilt. For example, a person may be holding on to feelings of guilt for something that has occurred in the past, while he may have incurred true blame, which is always erasable. The ego in him has converted it into guilt, which by definition is not erasable. See deprogramming guilt. As long as he believes himself guilty, he may try to make atonement through self-sacrifice. Hence the reference to oxhide, since the ox was in ancient times a chief animal of sacrifice. The benefit of this sacrifice of the person's life energy always goes to the collective ego. I'll say that again. The benefit of this sacrifice of the person's life energy always goes to the collective ego. The remedy is for the person to rid himself of the idea of guilt. Yellow oxhide can also refer to the person who, in wanting to do the right thing, has unwittingly adopted the self image of the good person, the good child, the good father, good mother, husband, or wife. And through being taught that being good entails self sacrifice, turns himself into a slave of his self image. This image clings to him tenaciously and prevents him from recognizing that behind his desire to be good is his false feeling of inadequacy due to a spell put on his animal nature by the collective ego. The phrase behind this spell may be, in and of yourself, you are not good enough, or your animal nature is the source of evil. The person needs to recognize that neither a false feeling of inadequacy nor a spell can be compensated for by adopting a better self image. Both can be removed, however, if he will rid himself first of the spell and then of the self image. See freeing yourself from self images and deprogramming guilt. This line can also refer to a person's being held back from learning from the sage because he believes that he might be required to give up his position, titles, or other identifications which put him up as special. Entitlements and honors hold him to the collective ego with the strength of oxhide, preventing him from retreating from his self image. Giving up his self image does not mean that he must give up the position he holds, since, whatever the position, the person who has given up, his self image will find himself useful. I'll say that again. Giving up his self image does not mean that he must give up the position he holds, since, whatever the position, the person who has given up his self image will find himself useful, and be aided by the sage. Line 3. Retreating to enslave others is nerve-wracking and dangerous. To retain people as men and maidservants brings good fortune. This line refers to the fate that is created when a person has adopted the self image of the good person, often out of feeling guilty for having an animal nature. See lines 1 and 2. Through doing good, he intervenes in the fates of others and thus prevents them from coming to a correct relationship with the cosmos. He also takes over the tasks that rightly belong to the helpers in order to elevate himself in the eyes of others. Both motives are wrong and embroil him and those he helps in repetitive fates. This is the meaning of nerve-wracking and dangerous. This line shows the function of the guilt spell put upon people by the collective ego, which is to enslave them into its service and garner their life energies through their striving. All self images, regardless of the type, cause a person to strive. This is observable in the person who helps others from the hidden motive of guilt. He actually uses those he helps for his egotistical purpose of being seen as good. In reality, he sucks their energy by making them feel indebted to him, while the collective ego, in turn, sucks energy from him. The good fortune mentioned that comes from making people into servants, in fact, accrues only to the collective ego. When a person's natural goodness and his cosmic virtues are usurped to the service of the collective ego, it is the cosmic consciousness which is robbed. A self image through something we often try to live up to is often something we really die to. This selflessness is perhaps the real meaning of Wilhelm's famous metaphor of throwing oneself away. This line can also refer to a person who is incorrectly regarding the sage as a servant of the ego. Doing so would certainly bring misfortune in that the sage retreats. Line 4. Voluntary retreat brings success to the true self and downfall to the ego. Voluntary retreat refers to a person's following his common sense, which tells him there is no advantage in engaging the ego in another person. Through disengaging, he deprives that ego of the energy it had hoped to receive, bringing about its downfall. This line underscores the incessant desire of the ego to attain energy through engaging the egos in others. It succeeds in this effort by employing any number of strategies ranging from flattery to arousing pity to making the other feel guilty to outright intimidation. The ways by which the individual ego steals energy shows that the collective ego can exist only through the agreement among people that the ego games being played are natural. This interaction also shows what happens when one of the two parties retreats from the game. The game ceases. What is not readily observable is the ripple effect that follows when one person withdraws from the collective ego itself by firmly saying the inner no to it. His single action weakens all the games being played by others through strengthening everyone's true self. This line can also refer to times when a person laughs at the downfall of the ego in another, or when he insists that the wrongdoer lose face, or that he must humble himself openly. By such acts, the person engages in feeling superior, something from which he needs to retreat by saying the inner no to the ego in himself. It is never the way of the sage to pour salt into our wounds or to rub our faces in the dirt of our downfall. See line 6. Line 5. Friendly retreat. To be firmly correct brings success. This line refers to keeping an outer composure in the face of someone's incorrect behavior, while at the same time firmly saying the inner no. This gives an inner message to the other's true self that it needs to distance itself from the ego and that it can do so without a loss of face. In this way, one is friendly with the other's true self while being firmly correct with the ego. Line 6. Cheerful retreat. Everything serves to further. This line refers to the sage that, in retreating from the ego in a person, never does so in anger or vindictiveness or to punish him. It retreats cheerfully, knowing how that the person will ultimately feel relief when he turns away from the ego in himself to reunite with the sage. The sage's retreat to support the person's true self is the meaning of everything serves to further. Receiving this line may be telling a person that he must not, for any reason, throw his energy away in an effort to please another or in the hope to gain nourishment from that person's recognition. Doing so causes the sage, which connects him with his true source of nourishment, to retreat. When a person is indulging in self blame, the harassing voices of the ego, the fact that the sage has retreated can finally call him back to listen to his common sense. To free himself, he needs to say the inner no to blaming himself. This line can also refer to a person who believes that he needs to retreat from society in order to follow the way of the sage. This belief is a misunderstanding of retreat, since all retreat refers to inwardly distancing oneself from the ego, either in oneself or the collective ego. Making an outer retreat means that he carries the ego into a grudging solitude, since he then sees himself as better than those he has left behind. He also remains attached to the collective ego by setting himself up in opposition to it. Outwardly retreating from a group is justifiable. However, when the group is about to create a fate, see Hexagram 60, line 2. Uh, oh, Outwardly retreating from a group is justifiable. However, when the group is about to create a fate, see Hexagram 60, line 2. Let's go do that then. Not going out of the gate and the courtyard brings misfortune. Here is presented a circumstance where the group and or organization of which a person is a part is about to create a fate. In such a case, he is not obligated to remain in that group. It is rather his duty to say the inner no to its intentions and to leave that group in order to avoid becoming involved in its fate. Leaving, in this case, is meant to include outer action. This can apply to a partnership, a group about to commit a crime, or a national group getting involved in a war. Upon receiving this line, a person needs to ask the sage through the RTCM whether leaving, after having said the necessary inner no, is the appropriate action for him to take. A person who says the inner no to his group's evil intentions engages cosmic protection for himself. This protection, however, is ensured only when he removes himself from the space in which the fate created by the group will take place. He will enjoy cosmic protection only so long as he abstains from self righteously trying to correct the others. Firmness in refusing to participate in what is incorrect is what limits evil in the world. The helper of transformation is activated by saying the inner no. My reflections. It was cool. Normally, I don't jump to the other lines and the other keys, but that one felt, I don't know if you felt that too, just a pull to, well, what is this? This feels incomplete. Let's go check it out, right? Feels incomplete. In that, the reflections I have is about the animal body and the importance of feeling. And what I see in this wisdom between these pages is the importance of feeling and how the animal body has been guilted and shamed so much from early childhood. And that can include, and seeing my son, well, observing my son and also raising him, is how much his animal nature is inappropriate for how the collective ego works. And it's been a informative mirror of how we shame animal behavior. For example, like him wanting to wee on a tree, like to do a wee anywhere, right? No, we have to go to the toilet, right? Him wanting to not eat dinner with us, he wants to go eat it somewhere else, right? Again, shaming for that too, because in human design, in the, I can't remember what it is, the arrows on your chart can environment can indicate where you should really eat food, right? For me, it's in my tropical human design, it's I need to be looking at mountains. It helps me digest. So by ignoring and shaming the animal body, you miss the finer adjustments that can be used for nourishment, personal nourishment. And there's a lot in this 33. In my tropical astrology, this, in my tropical gene keys, this 33 is in my vocation sphere. It's my core wound. And it feels, this version through this I Ching, it feels nothing like the gene keys. Absolutely nothing like the gene keys one. Because the gene keys one's about remembering. And what I found here in this I Ching is the guilt that we're born with, or the guilt that we're told that we're born with. How religion does it is that you're born into guilt and sin. And then how science does it is that we epigenetically inherit the sins of the past. And how this I Ching speaks to it is that we actually don't. We actually don't inherit anything. It's fascinating, right? So in that, whatever that belief is that we incur or we take on board, is that when you start saying the inner no to us, that no, you didn't inherit this from mum and dad's gene line, which right now in science is a big push to indicate that a father's trauma is passed down to his children, which from a scientific point of view is convenient, helps them seed the collective ego and that school of thought. But as far as the I Ching is concerned, it's like it's not relevant. It's not relevant because the helpers function at an atomic level, the invisible world. And what I find in my journey with this is unstitching so much of the scientific materialism that I've abided by and surrendering, and by saying the inner no to things when I feel compelled to do something out of guilt. Like, I don't know about you, but there were times in my life when, like, I'll be standing in a group of people and something bad would happen and I'd feel guilty, even though I had nothing to do with whatever the event happened, right? Or you'd be in an elevator, and somebody else farts. And I'd be like, oh shit, I feel guilty. But it wasn't even me, right? So guilt can run so deep in the psyche that you just feel like you incur it even though you have nothing to do with it. And I was raised in a religious household, which implied a Christian household, which implied, yep, original sin, born a sinner, you're fallen human, fallen, the fall of mankind, you're fallen, right? You're fallen out of alignment with God, right? So straight away you are guilty of doing that. It's going to skim through this because there are some really important things in here, and I'll cross them over with the 5 personality patterns as well. So, and the conflict here with the 5 personality patterns is it is another thing that's been potentially created by the collective ego. I've actually thrown some coins on that. Where's my coins? So it's helpful to restore the connection to the animal body. That's what I like about the 5 personality patterns, is that it helps you restore to the animal body. So the question I'm about to ask here is the 5 personality patterns and characterology created by the collective ego? Okay. 3 no's. 3 tails. So 3 no's. So for me, it's great to see that. I'm just feeling that. Good. The image of the rugged individualist here, and what I see that shows up in particular, my client base can come from the truther community. They tend to be a little bit more aware of what's going on in the world. They can feel the matrix. They can feel that something's not right. They can see that some of the jobs that they've chosen throughout their life or the people that they've chosen have been out of guilt or obligation, and that they know that there's another way. They've done a lot of inner work that has been bound by collective ego rules and structure and rigidity, like Tony Robbins, Landmark, all kinds of things. Or CBT, even mainstream therapy, is more about reinserting you, making you okay with the matrix instead of saying a no to it. Is that being an individualist, it can be really challenging to find a group or community that believes in, let's create our own world, let's do the opposite of what's going on in the world. And I've got a number of friends that, even my dad wanting to be this rugged individualist in defiance of the collective ego, but then still needs to pay fees, taxes, whatever, right? And then trying to grind their way either out of paying those things. And in that, the resistance to wanting to pay those things stops the helpers from coming in to help you just sort it out. Because when you're so used to grinding in the collective ego, you believe that that is the only way. Oh, no help's coming. Everybody else has to do this. And if I don't do this, I will be punished, abandoned, and pursued to the farthest ends of the earth for retribution. And we're talking about law, we're talking about institutions, we're talking about a whole assortment of structures that have been created by the collective ego to keep people comfortably numb. And in the context of the rugged individualist, the rebellious self-image, you go and buy a farm. My dad bought property up north. He's wanted to do it his entire life. He wanted to do it when we wanted to do it first time we moved out to Australia. And so he's doing that now, and he's rebelling against it all. And at the end of the day, he's still doing the God thing. Like, he still believes in Jesus and the Christian God, and he only believes the only way to create heaven. He's excited to die because it means he doesn't have to deal with earth anymore. But in that, it's still in opposites, and I can see the conflict in his body. And for him, he's the leaving pattern, leaving rigid. At times, he's the rigid psychopath, the rigid aggressive type. And it's helped him get to where he's got to today. And he's been incredibly blessed, and he praises something for all of his life. And I think that because he's part of that collective ego piece, that you just get rewarded by the collective ego. Like, the ego feeds off you. You need to feed off somebody else. It's like the original pyramid scheme. The original, and still the best because people are in there, right? Doubling back to the animal nature piece and the deeper aspects of my work is helping people connect to their hatred and their murderous intent and what's really in their body when they want to target someone who has betrayed them, crossed their boundary, all of that stuff. Yeah. So what I find is when somebody has denied their animal body, they try and think their way through it. They try and think their way through the shame and the hurt or the anger, or they'll say, "Oh, I'm disappointed," but under that disappointment is a frothing rage. So, what are you feeling? I feel really disappointed. So, cool. What else are you feeling? I think I'm just disappointed. Cool. Underneath that is a frothing rage, and I welcome that because rage is part of the animal body, and you just got to feel it. You got to really express it, and because it's expressed and it's done, it creates the space in the body for the helpers to come in and do whatever they need to do to heal that. But if the will is trying to hold it all in, you're not allowed to express that. That's shameful. You got to respect your mummy and your daddy. Anger is bad. All the Buddhists, anger is bad. But then, you know, you could put a Buddhist in a situation where there's a lot of conflict, especially in relationships. Can't keep it together. Cannot keep it together. So there are religions in the world that are based on the collective ego. All the Abrahamic ones I see a part of that. Now, more to this, neutrality. Neutrality is not the same as being numb. Okay. Neutrality is not the same as being numb. You need to feel, okay? And you might need to slow down. I know this is me. Like for me, um, the part of it, I was doing the dishes before and I was hating on all people. I was just there like, because I do post on social media and sometimes I don't get the likes or the shares or the comments that I want. And I'm like full on blind strategically trying to get people to, in my mind when I'm doing the dishes, like just spending all this energy to like, how am I going to get this person? How am I going to get that person? I'd really like to work with that person. How can I manipulate them to work with me? And like I caught myself as I was adding some more water into the bowl, into the sink. So what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm just like in this cycle of blame at first gear. And I don't know if you've driven a manual car. Really helps if you do for this analogy. But like you're just stuck in first gear, like revving, the limiter's like peaking. You're in that 7,000 rev. You can feel that, right? In your body. Because like you're trying to defend myself, or I'm blaming the other, or I'm trying to strategically work something out. All these other ideas keep flooding in. Gary Vaynerchuk says this. Some other influencer, Alex Hormozy says this. I've got to do it this way. This is how I need to do it. I need to create my strategy like this. My 5-point plan of how to bring someone in through my funnel. And then on the flip side of that, when all that stuff doesn't work, I go into reverse. Cool. Fuck yous all. Put it in reverse. Look at as I look at the back of the car as I unfriend you or unfollow you or block you, right? So, or just throw more hate on you because you didn't buy into whatever my product is, right? So, neutrality is devoid of any outward action or violent, unbalanced emotion. Right. And you learn to know the difference. When you connect to your animal body, you know the difference. And you can feel when, it says here, I'll have to go a bit further forward, that the ego for me is like the inner critic. Right. And it will, where was it? I can't remember what it said it in. Was it one? The tail. But there's a guilt, and that mechanism can be like the inner critic, where you compare yourself against somebody else. And then the part of us or me that feels like I'm not allowed to do a thing just gets bound up in the guilt. And then, oh, you're not doing it this way, you're not doing it that way. And then being a husband and a father, the same guilt shows up as well. Like, oh, John, you need to make sure the house is full of things to eat. Or John, you always need to be making sure that your food is ready to eat. Or the house has got to be clean. Or there's always got to be money coming in. You've got to, you have to make sure. You have to make sure your partner's happy. Happy wife, happy life. All of these things, right? In and of yourself, you are not good enough. Your animal nature is the source of evil. Animal nature, including the part of you that needs to sit outside and relax, the part of you that needs to rest. In and of yourself, you are not good enough. The inner critic, the inner critic, it will berate you into killing yourself, right? And the entitlements piece is that once a person, for example, when you start deprogramming this collective ego and the ego, is if you're already in a high position, then usurping that position or neutralizing that position can feel like a huge blow to the identity. I mean, for me, I'd say it took me at least 3 years to de-identify from my corporate, my pinnacle of my career. 3 years to realize that, oh, it actually means nothing because I'd spent so much time and energy investing into this. I do this, I do that. I made this much money. I had this car. I had this house. I had this. I built this off my own back, right? And also not acknowledging the cosmic gifts of what was given to me. Like my mum would say, you should thank God. You should thank God for what you have. I'm not going to thank God. Like I did this. God, right? But with this I Ching, what I can feel and I sense them is the helpers of the invisible world. Like I'm grateful for my gift of life in my body, in my animal body. I'm grateful for my gift, the gift of Cassie and Luca and all the community that is with me. Right? I'm grateful for the food that I have. All of these things are gifts. And what showed up in the hexagram yesterday was the cosmic banker. And I've been sitting with that around, well, if what I've got, I clawed and grabbed through utilizing the collective ego, then is it really mine? Is it really mine? And only an individual can answer that question. Maybe you could check with the 3 coin method, but only an individual can ask that question. And what happens is anything that was taken under the collective ego incurs a fate, and that fate can be undone when you understand what you've done, and that the cosmic banker is keeping a ledger at some level, and the universe, the cosmos wants to give to you. Okay, they want to give to you. And this concept of guilt and being punished for being guilty and being a culprit is something that takes a while to decondition because it's so embedded in us. Even with Luca, it's like, cool, make sure if you don't eat your dinner, you're not going to get this. Like we were doing Easter eggs over the weekend. If you don't eat your dinner, you can't have any dessert. So you got leverage there straight away, right? Don't eat those chocolate eggs, they'll make you sick. They might not. Maybe he needs to experience getting sick on chocolate. I don't know that. So there's this nuance here of how do you parent, how do you be when you start deprogramming some of this collective ego? And for me, in this leg of the journey, it's been I've been grieving and just I need to give it to the helper of transformation. Like, help me. What is this? What even is this? How far, just how far from the cosmic way are we all? And in that, I want to try and be good. How can I be the best example? How can I turn this into part of my business? Right? So it can just be me. So learning how to be me outside of the context of a good person requires me to connect to my animal body, which includes drinking when I'm thirsty, not caring if I'm slurping on camera, right? Allowing my nose to be itchy, somewhat editing out. I don't need to edit out all those things, right? When the animal body is shamed and not allowed to be, or is outside this perfect, rigid rules, then you incur fate because there's something else in you or in me that doesn't allow a person to be themselves, and in that nature is part of the cosmic whole, and I am a part of nature. The other really important one here is this: the ways in which the individual ego steals energy show that the collective ego can exist only through the agreement among people that the ego games being played are natural. Like, you got to make money. If you're going to make money, make sure that you buy books or follow people or go work with someone that can show you how to make money. Right? You have to make money in order to survive. You have to make money in order to buy the house, get the mortgage, do the thing, get the partner. Even in men's work in particular, you're encouraged to make sure that if you're not healthy or if you're not making a certain amount of money, that you don't go after a partner. It's all lies. This is all the collective ego spinning these games, playing on our fears and our insecurities. Because underneath all of that stuff is an insecurity that I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And a lot of men in particular take themselves out because they hit this void of I'm not enough. They do not know how to be guided through with either the helper of the sage or anyone or whatever it is, been helped through that void and come out the other side knowing that, well, I'm actually enough and I've always been enough. I've just never had anybody reflect that back to me and what that looks like. Because when that hook is there, when that image is there, the ego will continuously use that image as leverage to keep you obedient or to keep you small or to keep you in its battery its battery farm, and it will rather allow you to kill yourself than for you to find the truth. It would rather send you off to war to fight battles that aren't even yours than allow you to discover the truth. That a lot of this construct is an absolute lie. And it doesn't mean you need to stand on top of the rooftops and proclaim this. You just start with the inner know. Like, I can't, like, it's so counterintuitive to what the collective ego sells you. But by saying the inner know, like, particularly in my life, what I'm seeing is conversations are very different. I am different. How I live my life is very different, and different in a way that it's easy. It's easy. I'm not chasing. I'm slowing right down. I'm fasting today, and it's I can feel my body more. I feel my animal body more. And I'm fasting out of curiosity, not out of punishment. There's a difference. You can punish your body through fasting. Oh, I've been bad. I'm going to fast. Cool. Your choice. I'm going to fast because I'm curious about connecting deeper to my animal body. There's gifts here. There's a gift that I've been medicating through snacks or food or chocolate or whatever. So, everything serves to further, firmly correct, loss of face. Oh, the 5 personality patterns. Okay, cool. So, in this, I've spoken about the rigid here in a lot of the I Ching, because the rigid survival pattern, safety strategy, is the harder of all the 5. Was actually 9, but harder of the 5 in order to say no to, because the ego rule references and the collective ego is all about rules. How you need to be, how you need to show up, how you need to eat your dinner with a knife and fork, not with your fingers. Don't lick your plate, even though you feel compelled to lick your plate or your bowl. Cassie and I love licking our plates and our bowls because it's animal, right? You should see Cassie eat a, when we have slow cooked meat or any meat that's on a bone. Like watching Cassie eat meat off a bone, I just lights me up because she's pure animal, right? So there's something in embracing the animal nature that the rigid really has a struggle with. And that shows up in how they have sex, that shows up in how they perform in the world, that shows up in the clothes that they choose, that shows up in how they dance, all of these things. And to break the to to break the back on the rigid requires, sometimes you need psychedelics, sometimes you can use ketamine, but really it's about realizing that you are carrying rules that have been installed very early, and they've also brought you success, and that's the double bind, is that these rules have brought you success in life under the banner of the collective ego. And to question those rules means you're questioning your identity to the success that you've gathered throughout your entire lifetime. Like it's a double bind. It's one heck of a double bind. And with the support of the I Ching and I think the 5 personality patterns, you can actually merge the two technologies to create a psycho-spiritual transformation. Psycho-spiritual is a collective ego's term. How can I simplify it even more? An animal body transformation that is supported by a spiritual structure. Oh, it's not even spiritual, it's something else. Supported by the cosmos. It's an animal transformation. It's an animal body transformated, supported by the cosmos. It's that simple. It's a map that guides you back into your body, your animal body. And with that, you can listen to your senses more because you're not rule referencing, and your senses tell you what to do next or what not to do next. And it's from the body has the wisdom. The body has always had the wisdom. And I know there's lots of teachings that speak to this, and they don't. I found they don't help you get there. They still outsource a little bit to the collective ego. It's not a rooted transformation. It's still a little bit superfluous. So that's what I got for you. Thank you for listening. So I went on for quite a little bit longer. So I appreciate your patience and your curiosity and your willingness to just to want to learn and connect to something that I think it has been deliberately hidden because of the consequences. And for me, not gloating over the people that are suffering is part of this journey for me, because I do love a good gloat. The rigid loves a good gloat, the rigid survival pattern, because it reminds them I'm better than you. Right? I'm better than you. I'm ahead of you. So for me, saying no to that is where my humble pie is deliciously waiting for me. Mad love. Bye.